Welcome to Setit Media. I'm Abdu, your host. Today is Monday, September 15, 2025. Just last week, Ethiopia inaugurated the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, hailed as Africa's largest hydroelectric project. Addis Ababa presents it as a triumph of national pride and resilience. But beneath the celebration, old disputes and new dangers are resurfacing. For nearly a century, Nile waters have been governed by contested treaties. The 1929 Anglo-Egyptian agreement that gave Cairo veto power over upstream projects, the 1959 Nile Waters Agreement that divided the river between Egypt and Sudan alone, excluding Ethiopia, and more recent frameworks like 2025 Declaration of Principles and the 2024 Cooperative Framework Agreement, which Ethiopia supports but Egypt and Sudan reject. Against this backdrop, Ethiopia now faces accusations of unilateralism. Egypt has taken its protest to the UN Security Council, Sudan voices its own concerns, and Eritrea is confronted with a hostile rhetoric from Addis Ababa about regaining sea access. And according to France-based Africa Intelligence, Ethiopia has even established a new command post, tightening its military organization amid tensions with Eritrea. So the question today is GERD beacon of a progress or a flashpoint of confrontation? To discuss this, I have Engineer Suleiman Adam Hussin in the studio with me. Engineer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the inauguration and the legal dispute of the GERD. I think, first of all, it's due to say congratulations to the Ethiopian people, because this took a long time, and it took every effort to get here. So I think it's not a bad thing to say congratulations to the Ethiopian people for completing
Absolutely.
the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD. Ethiopia inaugurated, as I mentioned earlier, Ethiopia inaugurated the GERD last week. It designed capacity is over 5,000 megawatt, but only part of that is online, according to the data we have. Engineer, how significant is this a milestone, not just for Ethiopia's energy ambitions, but for the legal
You're
and political
frozen.
battle? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear
Okay,
me?
okay, I can hear you, yes. So, how's...
One second, please.
Okay. I can't hear you. I think I can see the picture clearly, but I cannot hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so let me start with the inauguration and legal disputes of GERD, or Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. How significant it is? Is this a milestone, not just for Ethiopian and Ethiopia's energies ambition, but for the legal and political battles triggered downstream?
Um, First of all, let me say that I agree with you that it's an achievement and that the Ethiopian people deserve to be congratulated about this great achievement that will have lasting impact on eradicating poverty in Ethiopia.
Indeed.
Having said that, the controversy surrounding it could have done without political controversies with neighboring countries, and that's the downside of it. And these disagreements with the partners may form the basis for further conflicts in the region. And as we all know, The Horn of Africa is already home to multiple conflicts, intrastates and interstates. So adding one more destabilizing factor was not necessary. It could have been avoided. And here is why. Because the international Ethiopians have absolutely the right to make use of the available water resources. However, no one can ignore the fact that Nile River is a transnational river, and so the international law states that no single country has the um, ownership of the water resources, so cannot claim exclusive ownership. So whatever, whether it is the Helsinki rules of the 1966 or other international laws such as the UN Water Course Convention of 1997, and they all set some principles. That number one, it is not the sole ownership of any of the countries through which any transnational river passes, and every country has the right for equitable use of the water resources, and no country has the right to implement programs or projects that can compromise the safety and the interests of another nation. So, more than the international laws, the three countries concerned here, Ethiopia, which is the source of one of the
The
Blue
Blue
Nile,
Nile.
the Blue Nile, and the downstream states, Sudan and Egypt. If I'm not mistaken, they have been discussing about this project for the last more than 10 years, I believe, and all of which have not yielded any tangible result. And
Mm.
Ethiopia, instead of allowing time for more negotiations and more settlements, chose to do two fundamental things that are not to the liking of the other downstream states. One is the unilateral decision to decide about the filling, because the
Mm.
filling of the dam is one area where the three countries needed to come to a mutually beneficial agreement. On the one side, an agreement that allows Ethiopia to fill its dam. On the other side, to minimize the loss of water resource um, coming to Sudan and Ethiopia. So not being able to come to an agreement does not justify unilateral measures. So Ethiopia chose to unilaterally decide um, how much to fill per year and in how many years.
Mm.
So that was one downside of the whole thing. And the other thing is the inauguration. The inauguration should have been preceded by a legally binding settlement between the three parties in such a way that the the inauguration does not kickstart a new phase of conflict among the three states. So, having said that, uh, if it was not at the done at the background of all these controversies and disagreements, um, the GERD by itself as an achievement is a great achievement, and would have meaningful impact on programs that aim to eradicate poverty in Ethiopia. And not just limited to Ethiopia, it may even go beyond Ethiopia. because electric energy is one of the big problems in sub-Saharan Africa. So generating electric power uh, at such with such huge dam and hydroelectric power for that, which is considered a very cheap way of generating electricity. So would have not only benefited Ethiopia, but also any country that who wishes to buy electricity from Ethiopia. So it would have paved the way for more regional cooperation and it would have enhanced the prospects for stability in the region. To the contrary, if one of the countries, whether Ethiopia or Egypt or Sudan, says my way or highway, that highway is very dangerous, and it's anybody guess how things would go, starting from that, and what those other countries would they be going to sue Ethiopia in international court or take their own what they consider appropriate measure to put pressure on Ethiopia? We'll have to wait and see. But the risk for more conflict is there, and a great achievement is shadowed by these political controversies. And this political controversy is one thing that would have been, in my view, avoided.
Okay. Uh, the concerns of the downstream states like Egypt and Sudan is that Ethiopia, at any time, at its own will, might block the water flow into their country for political reasons. And in that case, for example, I came across a point someone was raising that India probably did similar things this year with when conflict erupted between India and Pakistan. Because India is upstream state and then Pakistan is downstream states in many cases. So regardless the comparison of those two uh, uh, regions of the world, if Ethiopia decides to use as a political leverage against Sudan or Ethiopia, what do you see down the road happening between in the region?
Well, it's very difficult, Abdu, to say this or that,
Predict.
because if it was not shadowed by these political controversies and the potential for further conflicts, so if it was done in the way it should have been done, it provides Ethiopia not only with water resources necessary to generate enough, not only enough, but more than what it requires as in terms of electric power, and also enhances the chances for economic development. But also, let's be frank, even politically, it gives some more leverage to a country, because having a leverage or not having leverage cannot be uh, dissociated from the economy and the economic standing of any state. So in that sense, if it was not for this what I call the negative side of the negotiation, in the ideal world, it would give some political leverage to Ethiopia, and also it would give the chances for economic development in Ethiopia a huge boost. Now, what we don't know now is because economic development also requires political stability. Okay, and excuse me, Abdul. So that leverage that would come with achieving progress in the field of economic development would be compromised by the fact that the region is up to for or potentially, we hope it won't get there, because it's never too late to
Mm,
come to settlement, but we're just putting scenarios. So
okay.
if the region that's known in the world has been one of the most volatile regions in the world, with this huge controversy around the Nile. Um, so, if more conflicts are created, that intended economic development may not be as one would have wished. So, as for now, it's very difficult to say which way things are going, because we don't even know how Sudan and Egypt are going to react to 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 these measures by Ethiopia. Just as a reminder, the, I know everybody knows, but let me just add one aspect of the what makes an agreement very important in the case of the Grand Renaissance Dam, or the GERD. Uh, if GERD for Ethiopia is a matter of right, and an important element of its economic development, okay, for Egypt it's not. It's a matter of life on this, because Egypt totally depends on the Nile water. If there is no Nile water, one would say that there is no life in Egypt. So that makes the future unpredictable.
Mm,
That makes also the case different from the example you just referred to between um, uh, India and Pakistan. Both countries have a lot of water resources, and if it's not the shared ones, but in other parts of the country, they are not as desperate as Egypt, I believe, if I'm not
okay.
mistaken. So in the case of Egypt, because as I said, it is an existential matter. Uh, Coming to an agreement for Egypt would be a matter of national security, not a matter of national interest, but a matter of national security. So if I repeat again, it's never too late to do the right thing. It's never too late to come to a mutually beneficial settlement, even after inauguration. But if not, if it is used as a political tool
Mm.
to
To
put
leverage.
on another country. We don't know what that other country is going to do, so let's just wait and see. But the future doesn't look very clear. That's what I can say at the moment. But let's hope
Okay.
things will go the right way. Let's just hope that some the leaders in all these countries will come to their senses, and reason will prevail, and that the international community would intervene and facilitate any mutually beneficial agreement among the three countries before things go wrong.
Okay. Last question before I jump to the next segment. So Egypt insists the 1929 and 1959 treaties secure its rights, while Ethiopia rejects those as a colonial relics. With Egypt now escalating at the UN, are we looking at the genuine legal showdown, or is this more a political battle over narratives?
Of course, that treaty you referred to um, is and part of the international law. But the three countries, despite that treaty that allocates uh, mm, ratios to all those countries, despite that, I think the two countries, I am referring to Egypt and, but Ethiopia has never accepted
The
the
treaties.
treaty. Okay, and and to their credit, both Sudan and Egypt have been willing to negotiate. And in international laws, with mutual agreement from the concerned parties, can also be improved.
Mm.
It's not written on the rock. The important factor here is uh, how do people give more focus on peace and stability and cooperation than on conflict. So the three countries have been actually engaged in discussions, but failed to come to an agreement. And despite that treaty, both the three countries, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in 2015, they met their heads of states met in Khartoum and signed a tripartite declaration of principles.
It
Um,
was 2025, yes. 2015, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I believe so. And now unilateral measures are considered by Egypt and Sudan, and I believe rightly so. Uh, Even if we put aside the treaty referred to, both Sudan and Egypt will consider uh, the unilateral measures by Ethiopia a violation of a very recent agreement signed in Khartoum. And one of the core points on which they agreed is no country would compromise the safety and the interests of another country. So if Egypt believes that it is at a disadvantage, Ethiopia had to listen and then come to a mutually beneficial agreement. But saying my way or highway
Mm.
just paves the way uh, for more highways, and highways, as you know, are very dangerous. Uh, so that's what.
In this country, they say more accidents happen on the highway.
Generally speaking, highways are generally dangerous. So, figuratively or literally, but I mean, when an issue like the Nile, which is an existential issue to one of the countries, um, when the matter is related to such an important issue to one of the countries and amounts to an existential issue, uh, so that country would have no choice but to take any measures that are necessary in order to defend its interests. Okay,
Mm.
so those available means could be legal or otherwise. We don't know. That depends on Egypt itself. But non. I mean, the policy of fair comply, we have done it. It's up to you whether to agree with us or not. That attitude, I believe, is by itself is dangerous and it violates the very principle of the international law and because that international law clearly states that the countries that share this water resource should opt for equitable use. Okay, if any
Equitably.
parties does not believe that it's having its fair share, then we're up for more conflict. Uh,
Mm.
yeah.
Okay, let's bring the GERD issues and the Greater Horn of African and the Red Sea Basin issues together. There's a rhetoric that reflects the nostalgia of colonial era in Ethiopia. Beyond treaties, Ethiopian officials keep talking about regaining sea access. Now, with a new command post reportedly according to French-based Africa intelligence established near Eritrea, the rhetoric feels more concrete. Engineer, how does the GERD fit into this? Is Addis Ababa using the dam's inauguration as a proof of strength for both domestic pride and for projecting power towards the Red Sea region.
Listening to the propaganda coming from Addis, it looks like that's what they intend. Whether that would be the case or not is a different matter. And having geopolitical leverage does not justify changing political borders, because here the issue with the access to the sea, I mean here the sovereign access to the sea, or taking ownership of part of another sovereign country, it's not a matter of dispute between two countries. Because if it was a matter of dispute between two countries, the country that has more leverage would come out from the settlement with more, and the country with less leverage would end up having less. This is the nature of compromise. But here, there is nothing to compromise about. Yeah? Okay? Whether there is a GERD or there are 10 GERDs, nothing would justify taking part of another sovereign country in order to satisfy one's needs. So what Ethiopia is asking, I think these days they have made it even more clear by saying that they will occupy Assab. This is what the generals of Ethiopia keep saying, and this is what the Prime Minister is saying, and this is what I think now they are even. I think I watched a musical drama even about that shows that Assab is Ethiopian, and so there is a lot of madness happening in Addis. I don't know whether they really believe that that can give Ethiopia the right to violate international law, to violate the sovereignty of other sovereign nations, and to alter unilaterally international borders. If Ethiopia, for whatever reason, Ethiopia has become a landlocked country, it's no one's fault. It's not the fault of Somalia, it's not the fault of Djibouti, it's not the fault of Eritrea, it's not the fault of Sudan or any coastal state or transit state, as they call it. What would be a fault from these countries if they make it difficult for Ethiopia to access the sea based on international law and based on business terms, as it is the case all over the world. And in that case, one would understand Ethiopia. But I think anyone knows Ethiopia is actually using the port of Djibouti. Over 90% of Ethiopian trade, import, and export passes through Djibouti. There's also some limited use of the port of Port Sudan. I don't know whether it's on or not now because of the war in Sudan, and it's also some limited use of the Lamu. And if Ethiopia's economy, as Ethiopia claims to tell the world, that is growing and needs more access, more agreements are available to Ethiopia because it's also beneficial to those other countries like Eritrea and Sudan and Somalia and even Djibouti. But what Ethiopia is asking for is not diversifying the access to the sea, because that would have been a very legitimate demand. What Ethiopia is asking is to take ownership of a port
that does not belong to it.
It tried to do the same with the breakaway republic, Somaliland, which is part of Somalia, it backlashed and brought Ethiopia a lot of political and diplomatic loss. And to this date, Ethiopia has not come out of the negative consequences of that adventure. Now they are trying with Eritrea, and they're clearly saying they want Assad back. And here is the problem. When did Eritrea took Assad from Ethiopia? When was Assad part of Ethiopia? Everybody would know it has never been part of Ethiopia. And if it was part of Ethiopia, we don't know a case where Eritrea went into war with Ethiopia and took Assad by force. So Assad is an integral part of Eritrea since its inception in the 19th century. And when Assad became part of Eritrea at the inception of Eritrea in 1890, Ethiopia, as we know it, was not even created. Because Eritrea became formally a colony of Eritrea and was declared as a colonized country under Italy in 1890. And Ethiopia became a country 6 years later. So how could Assad have been part of a country that was not there? I'm not saying that there was nothing in that area. There were kingdoms that were feudal warlords fighting against each other and trying to create an empire, but that does not did not culminate into an empire with a single central government until late 1890s, when Emperor Menelik came to the throne in I believe 1996. So that's Ethiopia. So Ethiopia was not there when Eritrea was created by the Italians in the 19th century, and that Ethiopia itself is the case with all the other 54 countries across Africa. Its political borders were delineated by colonial treaties. And whether the colonial treaty with Italy that defines the borders between Eritrea and Ethiopia, okay, of which Assab is 60 kilometers away, and whether the treaty with Britain when it was colonized in Sudan, so it defined the borders between Ethiopia and Sudan, and the same with the British to define the border separating today's Kenya from today's Ethiopia, and the same also with Italy on the Somali side, and the same on the Somaliland side, because at that time Somaliland was under British colony, whereas the rest of Somalia was under Italian colony. And the treaty was also signed between King Menelik and the French to define the borders between Ethiopia and Djibouti. So without going into the argument about whether Ethiopia was colonized or not, but Ethiopia and the rest of Africa, its boundaries, political boundaries, were defined during the colonial era, and all its borders are colonial borders. So there is nothing new about Eritrea. It's the same, have got the same value as the boundaries separating Sudan and Ethiopia, the same boundaries bounding separating Kenya and Ethiopia. Now, so Ethiopia by doing so is actually crossing the red line, not just one, but several of them cross red lines. Okay, the most important of which is violation of the international law. Forget about Eritrea and its sovereign right to safeguard its territorial integrity. This rhetoric from Ethiopia is a clear violation of the international law, and the international law prohibits any state to take any territory by force from another country. Now, it's also a violation of the African Union founding principles, because the African Union is based on the sanctity of colonial borders. And by the way, Ethiopia is one of the founding members of the African Union. And not only that, it's the headquarters of the African Union. And the irony is the very country that hosts the African Union is the number one violator of the Charter of the African Union. And the red lines do not stop there. This act itself, it brings more destabilization and undermines the regional peace and security. Last thing, because we can go on and go on with the violations and red lines, but I will stop with one more thing. It violates the past peace agreements between sovereign Eritrea and sovereign Ethiopia, the last of which is 2018, just 7 years ago. And it also violates the ruling of the Ethiopian Eritrean Boundary Commission just about 20 years ago, which is very recent, and violates the Algiers agreement, because the Algiers agreement, the core part of the Algiers agreement, the two countries agreed that the arbitration would be based on the colonial treaties. So all these red lines, I don't know how Ethiopia is going to handle this or the consequence of such a violation, but it's very difficult to understand what's going on these days in Ethiopia. The other countries have the right to respond and to measures to safeguard their own territorial integrity and sovereignty. Absolutely, yes. Does the international community should keep being silent? I believe should not, because the international community collectively have the duty to safeguard international peace and the upholding of international law. So they don't have to wait until guns are fired at the border. Especially the UN and the African Union, their silence is something one find it very difficult to understand. If they are waiting for the guns to be fired at the border so that they can rush to mediate, I think that would be too late. Because once the war breaks out, no one knows where it would end. One would know where it would start, but no one knows where and how it would end. So all these violations, and in my modest observation, I have never seen. I have seen a lot of conflicts across the globe between states. Some are about territories, some are about other issues. But remind me if there is anyone, but I don't know a single country in the world that violates openly and publicly and shamelessly the international law in the manner in which the Ethiopian leaders of today are violating.
Sometimes I wonder if the immaturity of the Prosperity Party leaders is in favor of Eritrea, because it seems there is a double face in Ethiopian leadership. When they speak to the international audience, they say they present themselves as a peaceful or peace lovers. But when they talk in the local language, it is very clear their intention. For example, moments ago, this Ethiopian
በሲሱም ቢሆን ደግሞ የባህር በር ፍላጎታችንን አስመልክቶ ወዳጆቻችን ግልጽ የሆነ እይታ እንዲኖራቸው ስራዎችን የሰራንበት ሁኔታ አለ። ምን ማለት ነው ግልጽ የሆነ እይታ እንዲኖራቸው ማለት? ዝም ብለን ከመሬት ተነስተን አይደለም ባህር እየጠየቅን ያለ ነው፣ የባህር በር እየጠየቅን ያለ ነው። የባህር በር የምንጠይቀው ቀጥዬ በመገልጻቸው አራት በጣም ጀስቲፋያብል በሆኑ ጉዳዮች ምክንያት ነው።
According to this Ethiopian official or military leader, he says there are like four points that he would like to mention that legitimizes the question or the sea access request of Ethiopia towards Eritrea. He according to this short video, his focus was on Assab. And there are many concerns, there are many chatters online. But also, as I mentioned like a couple of times earlier, a Indigo publication owned French-based Africa Intelligence reported today, September 15, that Ethiopia has established, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, has established a command center near Ethiopia's border. So, in that case, if really Ethiopia is inching towards war with Eritrea, what do you see happening in the area? What alliances do you see in the region? For example, we can mention Egypt, Eritrea, and Somalia. They have a tripartite agreement in Asmara back in 2024. Also, we can say Ethiopia has backing of United Arab Emirates. Beyond that, do you see any international entanglement in the region?
Let's hope things don't go that far and that the war doesn't break out in that area, because as I tried to say earlier, the consequences would be very devastating. But before talking about the possible involvement of other interested parties, let me just briefly comment on at least some of the points this high-ranking general of the Ethiopian Federal Army
was trying to say
as a justification for Ethiopia's quest to own Assab. When I watched this video, I was a bit confused whether this general knew what he was talking about, or whether he was reading from a text that was prepared in advance, and of which he does not have any previous knowledge. The first point he raised, and he was saying that it justifies Ethiopia's quest to request to be given Assab, is that Ethiopia had some historical connection to the Red Sea. Now, which Ethiopia is he talking about? Yeah, when did Ethiopia, as we know today, was a coastal country in its history since its inception in the 1890s? As we said in the previous part, Ethiopia as a modern state or empire or whatever it is came into being after the scramble for Africa, and after the European colonization of Africa, and after Eritrea was already a colony of Italy with its clear borders. So when Ethiopia was created in the late 1890s, it was already a landlocked country. Now, but another point he raised is the proximity factor. I try to do a bit of research and find if such a phrase, geographical proximity to a coast, gives the right to any nation to change political borders or international borders and acquire a territory that belongs to another sovereign country. I could find none. And that's why I'm doubting if this gentleman knew what he was talking about. Another funny reason he mentioned it is security. He said Ethiopia, if it does not have its navy on the Red Sea, it can be exposed to some missile attacks from the sea. So, is this threat real? And does it justify that violating international law? And if there is someone who's threatening Ethiopia with missiles, do they really need? Does it really matter whether Ethiopia is a coastal state or landlocked state? Is Iran a landlocked state? But it was receiving hundreds of missiles per day during the 7-year war between Israel and Iran. And the same, Israel is a coastal city and is receiving hundreds of missiles per day from Iran. So being a coastal state, it does not shield you from being targeted by missiles. If there is any party who is interested to target Ethiopia with missiles, they don't need to do it from the Red Sea, and being a coastal state in the Red Sea does not prevent any party from doing so. And regardless of all this, it does not give anyone the justification to violate international law and to violate the sovereignty and territorial integrity of another sovereign state, which is a member of the United Nations and a member of the African Union and a member of IGAD. So that's why I really hesitated to say it, but I could not find a better explanation when I say it. I really wondered if this gentleman knew what he was talking about, or he was just repeating things that were written down for him to say during the Treaties. Because these days, the Ethiopian generals, this is another issue, by the way, about Ethiopia today. More than politicians, we see military generals talking about diplomacy and international relations and politics these days. Very unusual thing for a country, because in the normal world, this is the job of politicians and diplomats. Nowadays, not just this general, I forgot his name, Tashomi, I think, if I'm not mistaken, even his superior, the field marshal, says things that are very difficult to not to accept. Of course, no one can accept this, but difficult even to understand from if supposedly field marshal. And he was saying that when we signed a peace agreement with Eritrea in 2018, we were hoping that Eritrea would give up Assad. Can anyone imagine this? There is no better admission from someone that they did not believe in what they were signing, because that piece of paper which they signed in Asmara and in Jeddah clearly stated that the two countries should respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of each other. And the two countries should work together for regional peace. And the two countries should cooperate in other fields. But more important, Ethiopia declared in front of the United Nations Secretary General and the African Union Secretary General that it would accept unconditionally the ruling of the Eritrean Ethiopian Boundary Commission, which Ethiopia was so far hesitating to accept.
Implement.
Didn't then not implement, even accept, because there is nothing called we accept in principle, because either you accept or you don't, because that ruling is final and binding. It's not for negotiation. So that use of word in principle is just another way of saying we don't accept it. Because if you accept it, implement. Because the court clearly said the ruling is final and binding. And the two countries, before the ruling, they agreed and signed it, that whatever that court decides, it will be final and binding. So they all know this. So what the general is telling us is his prime minister signed the peace deal in which he did not believe, and the rapprochement with Eritrea was not based on a genuine belief in regional peace and good neighborliness. So when we listen to Ethiopian officials these days, I don't have the word to use, but the least I can say is very, very difficult to understand. And I don't know what the reasonable Ethiopians are doing about this, but it is it's not even fair on behalf of the Ethiopian people to be ruled by individuals like the one who's talking and the field marshal and many others, because whether we like it or not, Ethiopia is a big country. It's 120 million country, and is a founding member of the African Union, and is the second populous country in Africa. So the Ethiopian people deserve much better than what they have.
Indeed.
This is what I say. Let me go about now the second part of your question about who could be involved. Let me repeat what I said earlier. I genuinely hope that the two countries do not go to war, or Ethiopia does not go to, declare war on Eritrea. It's already declared, actually, in the real sense of war, but does not actually practically launch an invasion, because this is what it is. There is no other term than an invasion that can be used. Eritrea is not going to war. Eritrea has not declared war against Ethiopia. Eritrea is not claiming any part of Ethiopia. So if Eritrea fights, it will be in self-defense. So the Ethiopian side will be the aggressor. Now, the aim is, we know who is behind it, and some regional mini superpowers who are fueling this conflict. I don't want to mention names here, but many Ethiopian officials, I don't know whether how they were able to say it in public, because it is self-indictment. But I have heard at least two Ethiopian officials saying that the agenda of war against Eritrea is not an Ethiopian agenda, but a foreign agenda. I wonder how they were able to continue in their ministerial posts after they saying that. But anyway, that's it's not our business. So even if they did not say it, the whole world knows that Ethiopia has a lot more problems to deal with, which are domestic. Uh, Ethnic conflicts, economic downfall, and, uh, and, uh, and, uh, and, and multiple other problems. Yeah? The Ethiopian state today is not in control of much of the country.
There's
Okay?
also a report out today that there is the political space in Ethiopia is shrinking in a much faster pace.
You mean in Addis?
Yeah.
You mean in Addis?
In Addis, yeah, the political space in Ethiopia
Yeah, because
in general
now
is
now
shrinking.
there is no politics elsewhere other than in Addis, because
Hmm.
the whole government and the so-called political parties are confined to Addis, because the rest of Ethiopia is home to ongoing
Insurgencies and
insurgency. We would say Addis. Now, yeah. So Ethiopia, if it was ruled by right-minded people, would give priority to addressing those domestic issues because they really risk to take Ethiopia further down the road to disintegration. So another external conflict with the neighbor country, uh, and even if not justified, even if it was justified, regardless whether it's justified or not, is not to the interest of Ethiopia as today. Now,
mhm.
so which is why many Ethiopians are saying and repeatedly saying this is not an Ethiopian war. This is a war by XYZ. And we know that who that XYZ is Ethiopians know, the world knows. Okay. Now, so if God forbid the war breaks out, the intention of the sponsors of Ethiopia is to change the dynamics of the Red Sea. And changing the dynamics of the Red Sea also creates problems to not just to one country, but all the coastal countries in in the Red Sea, and primarily Egypt and Saudi Arabia, because changing the political landscape and the dynamics in the Red Sea, it also undermines the national security and national interests of countries. So I don't believe they would sit idle and watch while war is fought at the southern tip of the Red Sea, and whether that occupation takes place or not, in any case, it endangers their interests. And it also
Mm.
endangers the interests of the international community because that fighting, regardless of its outcome, regardless of whether Ethiopia is able to take by force Assad or not, still the fighting in at the southern tip of the Red Sea endangers the security of Bab al-Mandeb, and therefore endangers the security of one of the main waterways of the world.
Mm.
It has a negative impact on the world economy. It has negative impact on the world peace and security. So such infantile approach to getting sea access would not just limited to a border fighting, but
Regional.
would bring consequences that are very dangerous.
Mm. Indeed. To sum up the points that the Ethiopian high-ranking military official was saying moments ago on the screen, he initially mentioned four justifiable reasons that why Ethiopia is seeking sea access. He mentioned it four. He said he was going to mention four, but he ultimately mentioned only three. So number one, he said historical connection. He went on saying that Assad was part of Ethiopia, or Assad was with Ethiopia. I don't know which term is the correct term for them. And the second one he mentioned was the international law and the distance factor. That the border of Ethiopia, the how far the border of Ethiopia from the port of Assab. I think I don't know the accurate measure, but it sits about 67 kilometers from the border. And then another one, he said, it has become the point of survival interest for Ethiopia, not the pride. He didn't he didn't shy away from hiding why Ethiopia is really looking for the sea access. He emphasized that the survival of interest, and with it, he followed it with saying that not for pride. But it seems from the look of it, it seems that Ethiopia is not just looking for survival interest. It's pride, because um, the two, especially the first point he mentioned, was historical connection that the port of Assab and Red Sea has with Ethiopia, which is completely fabricated history. Now, let's map the possibilities, engineer. Best case scenario.
Yeah, before you go further, Abdu, of course, the reasons he referred to are, I don't want to say they're, anyway, I refrain from using word that's appropriate to the reasons that he mentioned it. But if he really believes that any interest of any country can justify the violation of international law and a violation of another sovereign country's sovereignty and territorial integrity, I think this general should go back to school. Now, that historical connection, I think I did mention
Earlier,
that Ethiopia was not even there as a country when Eritrea was created in 1890, with Assab being an integral part of it. Now, but even if countries separate, if there are some historical connections, countries separate legally and they become sovereign countries. Of course, in the case of Ethiopia, it's fiction. But even if it was, let's say, for the sake of argument, it was one country and ended up being two. Now, and if the two are sovereign countries, that historical connection remains history, but does not justify the violation of the sovereignty of the either of the two states that come out after separation. Now, when I watch the media, I read and hear many high intellectuals of high caliber in Ethiopia who say that, Sultan Ibrahim, the one who sold the piece of land and the Bay of Assab, because that's how it was called at the time. There was no city of Assab. There was just a small bay of Assab to that Italian company, Robertino. He said
in 1869.
He did not go back to Menelik, but Menelik was not even the emperor. That's one. Okay. And none of the feudal lords who were fighting against each other in the rest of Abyssinia had access to the Red Sea anyway. And even if Menelik was there, that Sultan of Assab has no obligation to even inform, let alone take permission of someone who is not the owner. Now, I don't know why they repeat all these fallacies, because the same intellectuals also say King Menelik ceded the port of Djibouti, which was called at the time the French Afar and Issa territory, the French Somalia, and I think it was called Afar and Issa territory under the French rule. King Menelik ceded under an agreement of lease for 99 years. I challenge any Ethiopian scholar to prove if that's true.
Because, has it been 99 years then?
99
has it been 99 years since then?
Yeah, it was, I think, sometime around the late 70s. Okay, Um, I challenge any Ethiopian scholar to prove if that has actually happened. Uh, um, there was no such an agreement between Menelik and the French. And French, as a superpower of the one of the superpowers of the era, uh, did not need to tell anyone about why it wanted to take Djibouti as its colony. The only agreement after the colony was established, and after Menelik was crowned the emperor of Abyssinia, because this is how it was called at the time, the only agreement is an agreement that allows Ethiopia to access the port of Djibouti with the permission of the French authorities. And because it was such an impoverished country, and the French agreed to construct the railway that links Ethiopia to Djibouti. Other than that, there is no any single agreement between French and Menelik that's related to the port or to the Red Sea. Now, I don't know why they repeat those lies, because however they repeat, lies remain lies. But we keep hearing very high caliber intellectuals coming to the television and disseminating this false information to the people of Ethiopia who are victims of this disinformation, because many do believe what their intellectuals say and become the ammunition for the wars of aggression launched by this belligerent state called Ethiopia. And this is what's still going on in what Dr. Abiy Ahmed is doing actually now is to mobilize the people of Ethiopia and use them for two purposes. One, to divert the attention from internal problems by bringing the issue of Red Sea and the pride that comes with it, and also to use them as the ammunition for his war of aggression. Those are dangerous because would not alter in iota the international law and international treaties. Eritrea is and remains and will be a sovereign country, and Assad was and is and will remain part of Eritrea. And it is a fact that Ethiopia is a landlocked country. So this is the naked truth, the reality that they should live with and work for regional peace and cooperation, because none of the other coastal states in the Horn of Africa has prevented Ethiopia from using the ports for two fundamental reasons, actually, for three, actually. One, because the international law also helps or facilitates the use of ports by landlocked countries in agreement with the coastal state. And two, because it's a good thing for regional peace and good neighborliness. And three, because it's also financially beneficial to those countries. So the Ethiopian case for access to the sea is based on false premises, because Ethiopia is actually invited to use more ports, not less ports, but under the international law. And the problem and the main obstacle between Ethiopia and the access to the sea is Ethiopia's refusal to play by the rules and to respect the international law. Other than that, Ethiopia has no case. And this is the reality, and Ethiopians should know this sooner than later, because otherwise Ethiopia may be up for paying huge prices for this adventure.
It's funny you say the Ethiopian leadership or the Prosperity Party leadership should live with the reality, but from the look of it, they're choosing to live with controversies rather than realities. Let's map the possibilities in general. Best case scenario, Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam delivers power, trade expands between the regions, and new cooperative framework emerges that include every riparian states, not just Egypt, Sudan, but the riparian states or the entire region for that matter. What would that mean for Eritrea and the region?
Look, in as I say, in the ideal world, Eritrea and the region, whether there is with GERD or not GERD, their primary interest is to preserve peace and stability of the region that has been home to multiple conflicts for so many years, and is the root cause for the underdevelopment of the entire region and for the poverty the region is suffering from. I think we have said enough about the GERD and the controversies around it. But in the ideal world, whether there is GERD or not, Ethiopia and Eritrea, their best interest would be in cooperating. Because if Ethiopia and Eritrea do not cooperate, it's not likely that the whole of the region will come together. Of course, other states would work together, but it would not be have the same value as if when the entire region is heading towards this economic cooperation and who knows in the future even political integration. That would come gradually and slowly, of course, but would be based on respecting each other's sovereignty, respecting each other's borders, respecting each other's internal affairs, respecting each other's independence. Because that's the starting point for any regional peace and cooperation and possibly integration is the respect of each country to the other countries. Now, if that's not there, then we can only hope we can only hope that there are no even more destructive wars. But of course, the prospect for any type of cooperation is postponed until further notice because it takes two for a tango. To make peace, you need to be two. To cooperate and exchange trade, you need to be two or more. The way things are in the Horn of Africa, God forbid, the consequences of the way of the policies of the current regime in Ethiopia would be detrimental not only to Ethiopia but also to the rest of the Horn of Africa, and the rest of the Horn of Africa should not be held hostage and wait what would happen in Ethiopia, and I think they should come together with Ethiopia and lay the foundation for their own cooperation and also be prepared to deal with the aftermath of what may or may not happen in Ethiopia, because the way things are, it looks like the future for Ethiopia is very bleak, even if there is GERD. And GERD in the normal situation is a big achievement, but policies may make things otherwise, and that possibility is real. And so the other countries such as Sudan, Somalia, Djibouti, and other states of the Horn, I think it's time that they stop becoming at the receiving end of this aggressive and belligerent policies from Addis, and also watch how things are unfolding in Ethiopia, because the aftermath of whatever may happen or would not happen in Ethiopia, they will be the ones who would be most affected than in any. Of course, the entire world will be affected, but the ones that will be more affected by the ongoing conflict in Ethiopia are the neighboring countries, and they should have plans to deal with the aftermath of the post of what may happen in Ethiopia, and also work with other Ethiopians who are willing to reverse the course of action and stop this madness in Addis and save whatever can be saved in Ethiopia and come back to the collective table of the Horn of Africa and work with their other states of the Horn of Africa. That will, of course, is the best case scenario, and the countries like Eritrea and Somalia, Djibouti, Sudan have a big responsibility here to also help Ethiopians. I'm not saying to interfere in internal affairs because Ethiopians are already trying to change the course of action and save their country, and helping forces that are saving their country without dictating your own agenda. I think is a noble case, and because there is no Horn of Africa without Ethiopia. Ethiopia, let's deal with it. Ethiopia is the biggest country and the most populous country, not only Horn but also in Africa. So when you are talking about Horn of Africa, we cannot ignore a country of such size. So if we are really working for the stable and prosperous and peaceful region of Africa, whether with this government or with the next government or governments, in bracket, still the people of Horn of Africa need to work for a better future, and that's what I would meant to say.
Wonderful. Engineer, before I wrap up today's episode, I would like to ask you this question. Is there a realistic middle path in order to tackle those two issues? There is a GERD issue that Ethiopia unilaterally took actions, and there is the Red Sea question that Ethiopia seems to be pushing for. So, is it for a lasting peace in the region and in the Horn of Africa? Is there a realistic path that those countries can follow?
Anytime before the actual war breaks out, there's always way to avert it. But things are different after war breaks out. But anytime before the war breaks out, there's always a chance. Regardless of whether that chance is minimal or otherwise, there is always a chance to avert the coming war. Now, the countries of the Horn of Africa, I think by and large, until now, they have been very restrained in reacting to the aggressive rhetoric of Ethiopia. They are just very calm and issue statements that are very measured and statements that, on the one hand, that emphasizes on the need to defend national sovereignty and international law. On the other hand, they are refraining from escalating rhetoric, which is good, but I don't know if it can last forever. The other thing is, what I don't see coming is actually two things. That these countries, it's good that to refrain from inflammatory and dangerous rhetoric like the Ethiopian leaders, but it doesn't mean they should not take some legal action and make a case in the United Nations Security Council, which is the ultimate body responsible for maintaining peace and security. So these countries collectively, in my view, should push the United Nations to intervene and stop this madness. And they also collectively should engage, however they think about the African Union, however they think about the IGAD, but still they are institutions and they are there. And these countries, not one by one, but collectively, should also call upon the African Union to intervene and do whatever is
on its power.
in its power to stop this madness, because this aggression is not just about Red Sea or seaport. It's not just about aggression against Djibouti or Somalia or Eritrea or Sudan. This is against the very foundation of the African Union, and this is against the very international law for which the UN Security Council is created to uphold. So it's not doing a favor to these countries when these bodies move and intervene before it's late. It is their responsibility, and it's not a favor to anyone. It's their ultimate responsibility to make sure that no country is allowed to violate international law and walk away with it. Such actions would probably help even Ethiopians to even a bit late to come to their senses. But some politicians in Ethiopia may interpret the silence as a tacit agreement, or as how do I put it? Yeah, as a tacit agreement by this body, and would encourage actually Ethiopia to take it a step further, and they would naively think that they can also walk away. So by sending this clear message to the Ethiopian rurals, I believe would help avert the possibility the possibility of the war, or the possibility of yet another conflict. But otherwise, the interested parties would not sit idle, as I said at the beginning of the show, and would take measures they think are appropriate to defend their own interests, and when they do in their own way, would not be the same as when the international community collectively acts to avert another destructive war in the Horn of Africa.
As usual, Engineer Suleiman Adam Hussin, thank you for your insights. Thank you for coming to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
GERD was inaugurated just last week. Ethiopia calls it a symbol of resilience and unity, promise of electricity and development. But the Nile is not just a river. It is a century of contested treaties, shifting alliances, and unresolved ambitions. From the 1929 Anglo-Egyptian agreements to the Cooperation Framework of 2024, every deal has left someone out, and every omission has left space for conflict. Now, with Ethiopia tightening its military organization near Eritrea, according to French-based Africa intelligence website, the stakes are higher than ever. Will GERD power a new era of cooperation, or ignite a dangerous scramble for control over both Nile and the Red Sea? Matters will be seen. This has been a Setit special program. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.